Welcome to Tombstone Tales. Have you ever wondered who lay beneath a grave and what their real story was? This is Toxteth Park Cemetery, the burial place of people whose lives are still impacting on the world we live in today. So viewers, please join us as we reveal this week's Tombstone Tales. From the heroic fireman to the forgotten man whose work paved the way to starting the modern Olympics. Still in use today, Toxteth Cemetery opened in 1856. It featured its own mortuary chapel, as well as consecrated and unconsecrated grounds. The city itself was still enjoying the wealth created from the port of Liverpool, and the local wealthy ship owners, merchants and nobility of the town needed somewhere to show off their wealth, in death as they did in life. Heading in through the original turnstiles, which are still in working order, we'll make our way to our first grave of the day, to someone who met their demise fighting one of the worst fires to hit 19th century Liverpool. This is the grave of firefighter John Comellin, who died on July 28, 1861. John was heading out to help fight a fire at a local factory who manufactured rope for the thousands of ships using Liverpool each day. What made this fire worse, however, was that also in the building was plenty of dried hemp and tar, both highly combustible materials, as well as the factory being the largest rope manufacturing factory in the world at that time. Now, what do firefighters need? Water is probably the main one. Unfortunately for John, the water supply in the Wavertree area of Liverpool was turned off Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday and Sunday, which made firefighting a bit harder, as you can imagine. As the fire was beginning to be subdued, John made his way into the smouldering factory, which is where he unfortunately met his demise. 9 of the walls holding up the factory roof suddenly came crashing down, with John being right underneath them. John was pulled out by his colleagues within minutes of the accident occurring, and his body was brought to a nearby tavern. However, it was too late for John. A doctor declared him deceased, with the report simply stating his head was literally crushed to pieces and no further help could be rendered. Now viewers, while we were filming this, we noticed a grave behind John with the same surname. After a bit of investigation, we found that, sadly, his daughter had been buried here 3 years earlier. Isabella Comellin, who died aged just 1 year old. May they rest in peace. Now viewers, our next grave is of a man who perhaps had the biggest impact on the world, more than anyone we have discovered so far. The man who helped reignite the Olympic flame, Mr. John Hulley. John is buried in section G, so we'll have to use our magic powers to zoom on over there. John Hulley was an English gymnastics and athletics entrepreneur who encouraged public participation in physical education to improve health and well-being, and without him the modern Olympics might never exist. As a gymnast, he knew the benefits of sport to achieve a healthy lifestyle, and in 1862 John Hulley's first Grand Olympics Festival was held in Liverpool. He went on to organise a further 5 Olympic Games festivals in Liverpool and in North Wales. On the 6th of November 1865, at the Liverpool Gymnasium, John Hulley became chairman at the first ever meeting of the National Olympian Association, which helped shape the thinking of the International Olympic Committee, founded in 1894. John was married to a lady called Georgina Bolton, the daughter of a local wealthy merchant, whose father was so enraged at the proposed marriage that he locked his daughter up in a room and refused to let her out. Only the help of friends of the family caused the father to unlock his daughter from her chamber and allow them to marry, with the daughter being born a year later. John slipped into obscurity, and at the funeral, less than a dozen people were in attendance, with John dying aged just 42 years old on the 6th of January 1875 from a pulmonary illness. It wasn't until 2009 that his grave was rediscovered, and with it, the remarkable work he had done in establishing the first modern Olympic festival. May he rest in peace. Leaving our Olympian behind, we'll head on down to the middle of the cemetery now, with the chapel looking so amazing in the background. But we'll be heading up there later on in this episode. First, we have a date with the Simpson, William Simpson to be exact. This next grave is of a rather eccentric character called William Simpson, who lived near Liverpool. Well, in fact, he lived on the River Mersey, right above the Prince's Landing stage. William was also a great believer in helping the poor and would place a plate outside of his cafe, so passing sailors could contribute to help the needy. Initially, he wanted to raise money to help alleviate the devastation of the Indian famine, but it was soon put to use in further fundraisers for the Welsh mining community, Irish community and others. The cafe stayed open until 1940, likely due to World War II and the very real risk of the cafe being destroyed by German bombs. May he rest in peace. Right next to William is the grave of another William, William Cross, who at one time was the chief rival of the greatest showman himself, P.T. Barnum. We'll be showing you more on this fascinating character in a future episode. Now viewers, a visit to Toxteth Cemetery would not be complete without a visit to the Anglican chapel that was built here in 1856. On the right are some very, very interesting graves we will feature on one of our future episodes, including a man who was said to have funded the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and a grave commemorating a cursed ship that had docked in Liverpool from Egypt, which, some say, was struck down by a curse caused by the disturbance of a pharaoh's tomb. But onward we must go for a brief look at this magnificent chapel. It is a Grade 2 listed building, but as you can see, it now lies in a terrible state, with pigeons being the only living thing making use of it. We'll now make our way over to Section C, where we find the grave of a chemist, teacher, but also a Charles Dickens superfan, who ended up marrying one of Charles Dickens' trusted actresses, Mrs. Susan Webb Cushman, who, if we can find her grave, deserves a whole video dedicated to herself. But today, viewers, our grave is that of her husband, James Muspratt. James was an Irish-born research chemist and teacher, gaining a PhD in chemistry in 1845 at the University of Gießen. In 1848, Muspratt founded the Liverpool College of Chemistry in a disused stable at the back of his house in Canning Street, Liverpool. Upon his father's retirement in 1857, he became a partner, along with his brothers, in his father's chemical manufacturing business. But it was also in the late 1850s that he wrote the textbook, Chemistry, Theoretical, Practical and analytical as applied and relating to the arts and manufacturers. The German translation of this book was widely read in Germany, which was the leading nation in the field at the time. Sadly, James' beloved wife, Susan, died in 1859, with James remarrying a year later. James died on the 3rd of February 1871, aged 49, at his home in Liverpool. May he rest in peace. That concludes today's Tombstone Tales episode. We hope you have enjoyed our video. As ever, please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment on our video. Next week we return to the scene of our first video, St James Cemetery, for a tale of murder on the high seas, a sad tale of a young boy lost at sea and a shipping disaster that is still recalled today.